Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Nerdy X. I'm joined here by the man, the legend, in his own shop, Ryan Haggerty.
What's up, guys? Back again, Ryan and Ryan's Comics.
And, of course, the sophisticated Black Bruce Wayne, or formerly known as Adrian.
Good evening, Nerdy X. Welcome.
I wish you guys could see his face. He drops the smile and everything.
I got on my Batman mask, too. I'm wearing it. It's on right now. I wish you guys could see it.
It's so impressive. He won't even let me touch it. So let's
Why do you
jump
want
right
to
in.
touch me?
Shh, don't worry about that. So we're going to jump right into
The Good, Bad, and Ugly.
I'm going to have the honors of starting out this time, and I want to talk about what's great news for me, the Sin City Possible TV show. In case you haven't heard, the Weinstein Company, that's Harvey Weinstein and his brother, super producer type guys, they want to work with Frank Miller, who's the creator of the Sin City comics, and Robert Rodriguez, who you probably know as directors of Machete, Sin City, Spy Kids, tons of other movies. Like, I'm a big fan of his work. They want to work with him in creating a show. They're looking to have it released after Sin City 2, so almost piggybacking on the success. I think the film's going to be a success. We've been waiting for it for a long time. So almost piggybacking on that release. So that's just awesome news. That's going to be next year in August. Personally, I think that Sin City is a pretty flawless film. It's one of my top 3 comic book films ever made. And I think it's the best film adaptation from a comic book ever. So overall, great. So I think like this move, I think Sin City lends itself to the episodic TV format as well, especially if it's on something like HBO. So
I have to agree with you. The movie compared to the graphic novel, they're almost identical. You could basically take a picture of the graphic novel and put it up to a frame in the movie, and you can see it visually. And the screen adaptation that Frank Miller and Robert Rodriguez were able to just make that book a reality, and like that is one of my favorite modernized, because that was modern and flawless even before like Marvel Studios came onto the scene.
That was before
you did have like the comic book movies. They were done by Fox, they were done by Sony, and then I don't know their production company. They came out with Sin City. I think
Troublemaker Studios. Yep.
Troublemaker Studios came out with Sin City, and they nailed it. Every performance was good. It just rocked me. I love it, and the aspect of a television series, they can do a lot more. Frank has to write more stories about it, but it's good.
Yeah. A good thing about Robert Rodriguez is that he truly believes in the source material and actually gave up his, if I recall correctly, gave up his Directors Guild credit because Frank Miller is not part of the Directors Guild, and he wanted Frank to be there co-directing with him. So he dropped out of the Directors Guild just for Sin City so they can have equal billing. So Robert Rodriguez is serious. That's the great thing you know about his stuff. He truly cares.
Yeah, he's got a history of being serious, too.
So my good is a little bit lighter. Sin City's kind of dark for me. I don't know. I always get scared when I watch that movie.
It's Sin.
Yeah. But Star Wars, which is one of my favorite things to talk about, started their own Instagram. Started off with Darth Vader doing a selfie. Now, there's a couple things about this. One, Darth Vader, all the different T-shirts and stuff. I go to Disney a lot. They have a lot of different, different artwork, alternate artwork for him, and always putting him in different lights. But he's always still like really cool. But Darth Vader having a selfie, to me, I just love it because it just makes it so like campy once again. And I've talked to people about this before. It's like, all these stories were designed to be campy and fun and good and all this stuff. Like the Force, like come on, like that is not a serious sci-fi thing, please. So for them to like just keep embellishing on that, making fun of themselves, I really like that. Especially as an official Lucasfilms sanctioned, Instagram. It's pretty cool. So.
Well, is Lucas behind it, or is this more Abrams? That's my only caveat about the whole Star Wars, new films being produced. Is Lucas sold all the rights, and it's more J.J. Abrams' idea than Lucas. So.
I bet it's a a Disney.
That's what I was going to
A
bet.
Disney intern.
I think it was a joke and started out. He was like, "This is a really great idea. Why would we not have this here?"
It'd be really cool if it's like Darth Vader was kind of like it was his Instagram more or less, and then he has people like jump in on it, Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, going.
Do you guys want Darth Vader to be campy like that though?
Yes.
I don't. Okay, well here's the thing. You look at all the overall Disney stuff. Don't forget, for every serious Star Wars picture, we have Mr. Potato Head as Darth Vader, and it's awesome. So I think there's definitely enough room on this stage.
I don't want
for
him in the
both.
movies to be campy, but definitely in everything else, I like to see him like that. So
subculture. It's
Subculture.
okay for characterization. Okay, I got you.
I would kill for a Mr. Potato Head Darth Vader movie. That's all I want to say.
Speaking of potato heads, you got to see Theo with his growth. He's been growing a beard for about a month. Potato head.
Proud of my beard. Proud of it.
Now I'm going to go into my good. My good is the mid-season finale of The Walking Dead. Right? I've been kind of critical of The Walking Dead this season so far, but that mid-season finale kind of made up for all their past indiscretions, because now I look at their past indiscretions more as character development because of what happened in the mid-season finale. So I'm overall pleased. But I also want to kind of correlate that the comic book series that's also an ongoing series that is kind of light years ahead of where the television show is also a good for me. This all-out war, it's a broadening. It's way more broad than what you're seeing on the television show on the world of The Walking Dead. They have a lot more new, interesting characters. There's people like Jesus and Ezekiel and Negan, and they've all had these impactful impacts on Rick and Carl's and whoever survived. Right now, you just know that Rick and Carl survived if you're reading the book. But to go back to the television show, Herschel died at the prison in the book, but in the television show, Herschel had his head beheaded. He was
actually, I'm going to correct you. He died after the prison when they were on their way to find the next thing.
Where are we talking about the book?
We're talking about the book.
No, Herschel died in the prison. Governor shot him in the head, and Tyrese was beheaded instead of Herschel. But if you put it in relation to the television show, they put Herschel in Tyrese's place, because that if you read the graphic novel, which you should, because it kind of gives you a alternate universe perspective of the television show. And if you've been an avid reader, you watch the television show and it's so drastically different, you can enjoy it a lot better. And if you're an avid show watcher and you haven't explored into the graphic novels or the monthly releases of it, it gives you a more broader perspective of the world that you're watching on television, because they're so far ahead. And it's a modern comic book, so you can find a lot of back issues aside from probably the first 20, which will cost you $1 million. But that's my good.
That's cool. That's interesting. I mean, like I've said, I don't read the comic book and stuff, but yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, the mid-season finale was incredible. On to the bad. Man, this it hurts me to say this, but Warner Brothers is rumored to want to make smaller superhero films. They want to make them come out twice a year, and by smaller, I mean characters such as Booster Gold, Team 7, Deathstroke, Suicide Squad, and more people along those lines. To me, this is just a very bad idea. And here's why. My first thing, twice a year? They're barely putting out a decent Batman or Superman movie every 3 years. I know I'm a Superman Returns apologist, but most people here will spit on me. Like Adrian over here.
I just spit on him.
I was not a big fan of Dark Knight Rises. I actually thought Batman Begins was the best one of the series. I mean, even though I know we all love Dark Knight.
I think we would all agree on that one.
But so when they say they want to put out these other movies, I'm like, that's just 2/3 of the Trinity. We still haven't got a Wonder Woman yet. Number 2, WB has a terrible track record with smaller DC films. Not talking about Green Lantern. Not talking about that. I mean, Jonah Hex, Catwoman, Yeah, we don't talk about those anymore. You really think that a Team 7 movie is really going to break that record?
Do you think though that the way that WB is seeing what Marvel Studios and even Fox Studios, what they're doing with their comic movies, do you think that they might step their game up though with these films? Like, because one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the characters they're talking about already, working with, they're low level characters, and when you have a big difference in personality, so like basically saying Superman being a god, Batman being a billionaire, Wonder Woman being a god, you got to really show like that Harley Quinn is really just a scrub. In the Marvel universe, there's not a lot of like Hawkeye's hanging out with Thor, but in that universe it works because a lot of the street level characters are doing that. But in this world, it's very separated. Green Lantern stuff is in Green Lantern world, Batman's in the Gotham world, so on and so forth. Yeah. So you're not going to see a Superman villain in the Gotham universe because of the power difference. So I guess my question to you is, do you think that is going to translate over to the film side?
Well, I think in answer to that, I think you brought up a good point. Really enough, I think that if this was Marvel, I would say yes. But for DC, I'm going to say no. And this is why. If DC says they're bringing out a Booster Gold movie, you're going to have a hard time, I think, convincing the main audience, the general audience, hey, go see this movie. Now, they've talked about these movies will have smaller budgets. I mean, they're talking like $20 to $50 million for these budgets like that. But I think it's just a matter of putting people's butts in the seats, which is it makes me question. I mean, honest, it makes me question, like, do they even want to do that? I almost feel that that DC. Like, Marvel's laid out this track record
for many years. That's why Marvel can do it, though.
Building on the point, Marvel's characters are way more iconic.
Yeah.
They have a Captain America, they have Thor, obviously all the Avengers. Yeah. They're iconic. DC, their characters they don't have as many iconic characters. True. They even have Flash. But Flash is one of my favorite DC characters. He's very, very powerful, one of the most powerful characters in DC. But as far as iconic, I don't know if he's really there. Yeah. He's not on the Thor level. So even the huge characters in DC don't even get that much attention.
Marvel has way more primary just heroes that they could just throw out there. Where DC, in my opinion, they have to establish their core first. They have to do Wonder Woman. They have to do Aquaman. They have to establish Flash. They have to establish Green Lantern, John Stewart.
Yeah, and
not Hal Jordan.
Well, and to piggyback on that, I want to ask you guys a question. It's funny because you mentioned, how you were talking about like maybe they're not so iconic, and you mentioned Aquaman and Wonder Woman and stuff like that. Let me ask you guys a question. Do you guys think that Guardians will be a successful film?
Yes, I think. Totally it will. I just think that because of the fact that Marvel has been doing it for so many years and people are paying attention to the after scene credits that tie all the movies together, they're going to feel like they're missing out if they don't see Guardians, which leads into Avengers 2 and whatever.
Ryan, what do you think? Just like, I'm going somewhere with this.
I think, one, as far as movies go in general, there's a lot of crazy sci-fi movies coming out, and when we go to the theaters, we have to buy in a lot of times already. So now we get a Marvel Studios production, and we get to go see a universe that we're already familiar with exaggerated universe. And you get to see them in that aspect. So now you're going to get more fans because you're going to get those sci-fi fans coming out. Oh, I never really liked these movies, but now Guardians of the Galaxy, like, this sounds something that might be more on my alley. So you might even get more of a cult following for that, I think, than the other ones did, because they're not as sci-fi-ish. And I think that's why Iron Man did good initially, because they had that sci-fi stuff going on.
But just to expound on the fact that DC has a Herculean effort, not just Marvel Studios productions, but just think they have to go against Sony's Spider-Man inventory of movies that they can expound upon, and then you got Fox who has X-Men, where DC, aside from Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and that's actually the point I wanted to mention, because both of you guys hit it for me. You both said the universe. I think Ryan said that immediately. You both said the universe that they've already created is enough. You know what I mean? Like when we see Rocket Raccoon and stuff like that, like, we know the backstory of this universe. If you're talking to regular people about a Booster Gold movie and all you've seen is a Batman and a Superman movie, I question if that's enough. Not to harp on this point too much more, but like that's just my thing. Let me at least see an Aquaman movie or a Wonder Woman movie or a Flash movie. I know we say they're not that iconic, but they've got to be a lot more than Deathstroke. So who the average people may just know from Arrow, from being a character on Arrow.
But characters like that, I think, will translate better because you have a killing machine in costume now, and now it's just gonna be a crazy action movie. Like a Deathstroke movie, I think will translate better.
Well, Deathstroke will be dope, man.
Yeah. It'll be better than Booster Gold because Booster Gold will be cool because you'll see him travel and stuff in time. But
And Booster
even
Gold,
then,
I'm sorry. Booster Gold will be a success if they can tie it into the Batman versus Superman film, or have him be some type of sub character like they developed Hawkeye in the Thor original. You know what I mean? So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just that I guess me personally, when I look at it, like I almost just don't feel like there is enough backstory. Obviously, I want to see these films. I mean, of course, I want to see them, but I almost feel like Marvel said, like, hey, here's the map how to get to the treasure. It's going to take 30 minutes, and DC's the guy saying, no, thanks. I'd rather find a shortcut in 15 minutes. And I can't take comment for that analogy. I actually read it on a commenter on this talking about this thing, but I thought it was a great analogy. My last point I really just want to make is, so if they make a Deathstroke movie, like you said, awesome, right? Action mask character, awesome. Will he tie in with Arrow? Warner Brothers already said that both Arrow and the upcoming Flash TV show properties probably won't be on the big screen. So it's like, okay, are they going to have another Green Arrow in this future Justice League movie that's not going to be Stephen Amell from the show? What about the Flash? Are they going to end up having two Flashes? They have another Deathstroke?
I think they could go along the routes of like S.H.I.E.L.D. They have an alternate TV universe like they do on the show, because there's going to be a lot of S.H.I.E.L.D. characters that will never see the cinematic universe
Sure.
from Marvel.
But they're
part of the continuity. They share, and there's no repeats. And as far as the Flash goes, like I said, he can't do his own movie. He's not interesting enough. All he can do is run fast. Like, if you go really crazy with his powers, and but then you're stretching it, then you're just like, oh,
well, I guess
you're gonna lose a lot of people.
The thing just is that DC said they're not even trying to bridge that gap. Like they're saying our movies and TV are never going to interact. Period. So even if Flash shows up briefly in the Batman Superman or whatever, they're saying it's going to be a completely different Flash than at least the TV show. So
That's fine for me.
That's the question. That's the thing I do not like about DC. But man, I feel like I was on that point for a long time.
Yeah, all right. We were talking about it. Go ahead.
My bad is going back to the comic book man. They, Walt Flanagan and Bryan Johnson released through Dynamite their comic book Cryptozoic Man. Cryptozoic Man is just it's a cliche comic. I'm not gonna lie. Walt Flanagan's got a lot of love for his writing abilities in the past. I'm not obviously I'm not a fan of comic book men. I just feel like they're sellouts. The guys that do know about comics in the show, I feel like are sellouts. I'm not saying that I wouldn't sell out, but they're the ones that did it first, so I can talk about it.
What would you sell out for?
What would I sell out for? Yeah. Like how much money?
Yeah.
Shoot.
Pay attention, listeners.
He's about to get personal. He licked his lips before he said it.
You can't afford me, so don't even think about it.
I got you.
And it did really bad, actually. They released it. I feel like if you put a comic book out and you have a national stage to talk about your comic, then you should be able to, get it out there. So initially they talked about it on the show, but didn't do anything. It was selling for $2 on eBay. People were just buying them up. And Kevin Smith started talking about it, and of course, all the Kevin Smith fans, next thing you know, are jumping on it. And since it's such a low print run, because no one really cared, honestly, people wanted it all of a sudden because Kevin Smith said it was good. So now they're going for $25 to $30 a piece online, and if it's signed, I even saw one going for $200, signed by Walt Flanagan. Now, don't get me wrong. They're on TV, they're semi-famous, but for their book to go up that much just because Kevin Smith said so is going back to what I was talking about in previous episode. He shouldn't have this much pull in the industry. He hasn't written a decent comic book in I don't know how long. He hasn't made a decent movie in I don't know how long. Why is this guy who's not really representing the nerd public that well still directing everyone which way to go? And I just think, like I said, it's just another point as far as comic book men not being something that I agree with.
I just kind of want to expound that the comic book men are nowhere near as handsome as me, Ryan, and Theo.
Adrian always has to go there.
He's
But you know, if
he's a gentleman and a scholar.
if you're going to compare,
embarrass me sometimes.
if you're going to compare us, I mean, yeah, we're better, and they're fake, but we're way better looking. I'm going to go into my bad now, and my bad is going to offend Theo and Ryan. I'm going to say that
I'm already angry.
The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is my bad, and it's just they're about to release the trailer. They've been releasing these screenshots.
Sounds like you're about to cry right now.
Well, I'm not about to cry. I'm about to slay Amazing Spider-Man 2. Only because of the fact that for me, as a comic book reader, comic book culture fan, right, to see the translation into the movies, right, everybody that knows Marvel Studios is the official Marvel movie brand, right? Sony has creative control over Spider-Man, which is Marvel's most iconic character.
Yeah.
But if you're a true comic book fan and you like and love comic book movies, if it's not Marvel Studios, it's not really authentic. That's just what I want to say. Okay, because I
cut you off there?
Say again?
Why do you think? Why would you say that? If I own something, it's mine. If I own the movie rights to something, it's mine. You can't say mine isn't official because I own it. So if another studio owns it, it's theirs.
I think he means owns as in originality.
Well, I just mean as it in the fact that, like, okay, you have Marvel Studios, which is this great success, right? You have Spider-Man, which the properties under Sam Raimi were very successful. Now with the reboot under, what's his name? Mark Webb, right? They did not put up the numbers that the previous movie were putting up. They put up a good front, but they're not going to do Marvel Studios numbers. And that right there speaks volumes.
And that
for me
is
as a
but that's
fan.
also timing too, because you know you have a reboot of a movie that hasn't been made ever, pretty much. Well, and you got big actors at the time on the movie, big director at the time on the movie. Spider-Man, let's go watch that.
And Spider-Man 1 and 2 were very good. Even
And
Spider-Man 3 did very
and
well.
the second one, and then you know people have a problem with the third one. That's a whole conversation in itself. But
Amazing Spider-Man did not do the numbers that the first three films did.
I understand that, but why would that many people? You're not going to get the same amount of people going to go see the same character. If I'm just a 42-year-old mother who has a 6-year-old kid and a 5-year-old kid, and I already saw the other Spider-Man movies, and I saw the third one, it left a bad taste in my mouth. Why would I go spend another $20 or another $30 to go take me and the kids to the movie when we already seen the Spider-Man movie? I almost didn't see it. I'm a Spider-Man fan.
I disagree with you. I just think that
It's not about disagreeing or agreeing. It's about what's actually happening in the demographics of the nation.
Well, for me, it's like this. Okay, you had the first Spider-Man films, right? Okay, and then you had the reboot, and then you have Marvel Studios that were establishing these characters. Aside from the Hulk, which was done under Universal before, that one has nothing to do with Marvel Studios because it was such a bomb that that they gave it up. Marvel Studios did their films. Amazing Spider-Man is separate from the Sam Raimi films. Those were astronomical for their time. The Amazing Spider-Man with Garfield, directed by Webb, did not do the numbers. Okay, and even though Marvel Studios made a way more incredible Hulk film than Ang Lee did, it suffered because people who don't know the culture were thinking it was a sequel when it was a reboot. And I think what Amazing Spider-Man suffered from is that people think it
Hulk
might
was
be
a
the
sequel.
No, it wasn't.
Hulk was a sequel.
Incredible Hulk was not a sequel to the Hulk film done by Sam Raimi. It was totally different. They were not the same character.
Not to create a tangent, but both of you guys are actually right. I remember when Incredible Hulk came out, and they said they want to start it in the jungles because that's where the first one ended.
Yeah.
So and now Incredible Hulk technically does have a different origin story, but it was not harped on enough. It was not harped on to the point that's like, oh, these are two different films.
That was
it
marketing, though.
could
There's
be a sequel.
If there's a story before
That was
that
marketing.
leads you to another story.
So it could
to
possibly
me,
be a
that
sequel.
is a pre-
and
is
I
a-
personally have always looked at a sequel. But continue with
It
your
is
point,
not
though.
a sequel. It is a separate property. It's a separate universe. And that just.
But it's
that's
not. They connect it. They connect the stories in the actual movie, so you can't say it's a separate.
I would like to
universe.
see an official document that says
We're gonna have that on the next
Official
po-
document.
we'll have the
Dude,
next
there's no
podcast
official
then.
documents for anything that we're talking about.
Okay, but
Get
It's
back
not.
to your point, though.
Okay.
You were making a great point. That was
Basically, I think that the Amazing Spider-Man is suffering from the reboot syndrome. Is that the people who really aren't as inclined to know the history of Spider-Man like we do and be invested into the movies, they don't know that it's a reboot
They're
automatically.
fatigued. You can
and
tell.
they might be fatigued. They might think it's Spider-Man 4 because before it was Amazing Spider-Man, it was advertised Spider-Man 4, Spider-Man. Now this might be Spider-Man 5 in a lot of people's mind, and I think that's where it suffers from, and it suffers from the fact that it's
you
not
think
Marvel Studios.
So you think it suffers more from it not being Marvel Studios, or from people getting confused on it?
I think it's both.
So you think people make their decision on going to see a movie based on the studio?
Yeah, I
You think the majority of people do?
I think
The millions and millions of people that go, you think the majority of them
I think the movies
look
speak
up?
for themselves.
No. We're talking about
If the Marvel
you don't-
Studios movies bring
You don't
more
go
numbers,
to a movie. You go to a movie when it's released, and then you make a decision on if you like it or not. You don't make a decision on I don't like this studio, so I'm not going to go see it.
well. Where you're getting a point. Actually, I'd like to chime in on that. I'm actually going to say, if this was pre-Iron Man, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. No one's making a decision on the studios. But I would say, honestly, I'm gonna start calling this term post-Avengers. I will say yes, and the reason why is because someone says, "Well, Spider-Man, yeah, but is he gonna be with Iron Man
They
and
can't
Thor and
connect
stuff
them.
like that?" And I think that for I'm not going to say millions. I mean, I can't tell you the numbers of that, but I would say there's probably significant people that says, well, it's not going to be hanging. He's not going to be hanging with Thor and
I
the
guess
Hulk.
I guess I'm
So
looking
think
at a
that may
perspective of
influence some
of-
buyers.
and I'm going to say realistic in the point of just human beings in general in the United States. Like, when you really think about it, how many people like me and you are making up those dollars for those movies?
That's a valid point.
It's going to be a lot lower than the average moviegoer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot lower than the people that are just going to go see a movie because they're going to go see a movie.
Mm-hmm.
A lot lower than the moms that just taking their kids because she just wants to get them out of the house for
Mm-hmm.
the night. So what I'm saying is, I'm thinking that that's going to outweigh the nerds.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So when people are making a movie and when they're marketing a movie and all that stuff, they're going for the people that have no idea what this is. The people that already know Spider-Man are going to go see it no matter what.
I'll tell you why it's my bad. Is because as a nerdiac, when a movie comes out, I gauge it by how many times do I go see it. I see movies multiple times. If I only saw Amazing Spider-Man twice at the movie theater, I would see Iron Man maybe 5 times, Thor maybe 4 times, because the universe is so connected and the story is so involved with other movies, I might miss something in that one. And the Spider-Man story is so singular because it's its own universe and it does not connect to the Marvel universe that it disinterests me more, especially in terms of box office numbers, during open season. Now, video, it's different.
You just can't compare the two movies, though. You can't compare Amazing Spider-Man to the original Spider-Man as far as numbers go, because one, you have a new generation of people coming into a whole new way of filmmaking,
It's not
and
really
then you have a
different
repeat.
generation, though.
Yeah, you don't have another Spider-Man movie up until what, the 60s? Like that was the only other time when Spider-Man was live action. So you have 50 years in between when they make the movie, or 40 years.
Well, I will say this, and I think both of you guys actually agree on this point, that there is a bit of a box office fatigue. I'm along with that. I don't think there was enough time between Spider-Man 3 and the Amazing Spider-Man, but I mean, as most of us know, and I'm sure some of you listeners know as well, Sony needed to make another Spider-Man movie. They needed to make another Spider-Man movie in order to maintain the rights to it.
Yeah.
And they felt that the feedback from Spider-Man 3 was so bad, they just figured, scrap it, reboot it. And I do think that left quite a bad taste in some people's mouths.
I just don't
as
feel
well.
like you could say it's not real when I own it, when someone owns it.
People liked Tobey Maguire.
If Marvel sold the rights, that means they sold it because they didn't want it. So if someone else was using it, it's theirs.
Well,
I've
it was
never
going to
had
be
that
their
argument.
original
I've never had
development.
that argument.
It was going to be the original development. It was supposed to be directed by James Cameron. The original Spider-Man was supposed to be directed by James Cameron in like 1988, because Marvel wanted to establish a film, and it was supposed to be Spider-Man directed by James Cameron.
that script is terrible,
And
by the
that
way,
script
too.
is
It's-
terrible.
it's
That's
weak
the
to line. It's
original
terrible.
incarnation of it. And then Sam Raimi came in with a little bit of success and did it with Tobey Maguire, who is American, by the way. And another reason why it's bad is because I think Peter Parker should be American and Andrew Garfield is British. And I'm not racist, it's called nationalist. So I just want to end it with that.
And
My
on
God.
that, you had a great argument until you brought in that thing, which is moving on to the ugly here. People are going to think that I'm picking on Warner Brothers, and I'm really not, because I love you, Warner Brothers. But I also found out this week that Warner Brothers wants to make a live-action Young Justice TV show. Now, if you're not familiar with Young Justice, it's a critically acclaimed animation show that focused on Aqualad, Robin, Nightwing, Blue Beetle, Superboy, Miss Martian, Kid Flash, and other quote-unquote sidekick characters, their counterparts to the Batmans and Aquamans and Supermans, etc., etc. It was canceled, even though fans across the internet, we really rallied for its return. Warner Brothers has said they want to make the show be a teen drama / romance show with a superhero twist. I'm sorry, it just hurts me even as I say this out loud. Why I love the idea of another DC Comics TV show. I'm a big fan of Arrow. I'm going to be a big fan of The Flash when it comes out, and this show could definitely have crossover between the existing TV properties. Why not just bring back the cartoon of Young Justice? It was a great cartoon. You had 2 seasons. It was just fantastic. Why not bring that back rather than a teen drama show?
Can I rewind real quick?
Go ahead.
Did you predict your fandom? You said, I'm going to be a fan of Flash.
Listen, I think The Flash is going to be produced by people who made Arrow. And you know me. I might as well have like a big Arrow tattoo on my back. I love Arrow. So if they just maintain 75% of what they're doing for Arrow, then they've already got a fan. I'm shutting up. They're taking my money. But the fans are here. Don't tease us with other mediums. The cartoons are fine. And since I feel like I've been bashing Warner Brothers, I just want to apologize and talk to you, the head of Warner Brothers, who I'm sure is listening to this podcast. I love you. I really do love you. I love your enthusiasm. But please, stop talking about Booster Gold and Team 7. Stop talking about Young Justice live action shows. We know we were harsh on you for Green Lantern. I like to apologize for that. If I had known that you guys were going to start doing a Team 7 movie at me, I would have applauded Green Lantern for its greatness. But I think you should let's focus on the main trinity. Just give us a Wonder Woman movie. Think big, not the small screen. Warner Brothers, I love you. I'll see you tonight.
So I'm going to go to my favorite company for my ugly, and it's Disney. Disney didn't do anything wrong, because they don't do anything wrong in my eyes. Just went to Disney this last weekend, and every time I go, it's just a great, amazing experience. But that's another story. So Disney came out with the new movie Frozen. Great movie, loved it, funny the whole way through. The previews got me hooked in, and stayed true to what they teased. So definitely, if you haven't seen Frozen, go see it. But if you're in Florida, be careful, because in a local Florida theater, they were having some technical problems, and they were putting previews for another movie on, and they accidentally put on a porno. And there was quite a few parents there that were not very happy, because we all know this is a kids movie. And
I have a question, Ryan. What kind of theater was this that had a porno on stack?
Yeah.
Apparently the theater only gave everyone complimentary tickets and just said, sorry. So I guess this is a very unclassy theater. I feel like my kid would need therapy after that. I don't know exactly what showed up on screen, but I'm assuming it wasn't very good if they had to give out tickets to everybody.
They know it was a porno. What kind of theater just has...
And what I'm thinking is, if you're working back there, you know what you're doing. These are all digital reels now.
They had to switch that hard drive.
They had to switch that. They knew what was going on. That wasn't an accident. Everything is labeled.
Somebody had a vendetta. Somebody had a vendetta against that
It
theater.
just happened to be the Frozen movie. It just happened to be the Frozen movie.
Something was frozen hole or something like that instead. That's ugly.
I'm going to go into my ugly. As a nerdiac, I kind of grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons. And in the modern age, we have high-definition television, and that tradition still continues. You might not see it on the major networks like NBC, ABC, and CBS, but now with cable, you have them on Marvel Universes on Disney XD, and DC Nation is on Cartoon Network. Now, I say it's ugly mainly because of this, is that if you're a nerd, everything that has to do with comic books, if you're a comic book nerd or a movie nerd, everything is Marvel versus DC. And this goes back to Saturday and Sunday morning cartoons. What I think is ugly about it is that Cartoon Network, DC Nation, has failed at producing consistent projects for their viewing public for their DC Nation productions.
Like as far as what?
Well, I mean, they had Young Justice. Young Justice was a success, but not a long-term success because for some reason Cartoon Network decided to cancel it unceremoniously, and they did the same thing with Batman Beware. Now,
And Green Lantern, the animated
and
series.
Green Lantern, the animated series. Now, I'm going to say that as a art enthusiast too, and like art, DC puts out a much better animated structure than Marvel does. Now, but what I'll say Marvel Universe does on Disney XD is they're not as good animated, but they produce consistent stories all the time. They always have inventory of superhero stories. They got Hulk Agents of Smash, they got Ultimate Spider-Man, they got Avengers Assemble, they have Earth and Mightiest Heroes, and they all had a very good following. Now, the consistency of Marvel is apparent, and it translates not just on Saturday morning cartoons, but it translates now into television series with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it translates into the cinematic universe with Marvel Studios, Avengers, and all that. And where DC is lacking behind, and it is very ugly, it is this example of DC Universe is the same example as their cinematic universe. They don't put out consistent stuff and not being consistent.
I want to ask you a question, Ryan, because I know you haven't really watched any of the animated shows on both sides. Or are you watching the
new
Amazing
ones?
Spider-Mans? Yeah. I know you
Not the most recent ones, no. But
So-
I've watched past ones.
Okay, so I would say, like, for your perspective, just on what friends have told you, do you think you'd be more apt to watching is it Hulk Smash? Is that what it-
Agents of Smash.
Hulk's Agents of Smash, and those shows like that, or maybe more like the Young Justice, slash Green Lantern, the animated series, slash Beware the Batman stuff. Just from what you've heard, since you're almost like and I know you love Spider-Man stuff too.
I would just probably like the Marvel Universe on the anime side better anyways because I like the style, like just from seeing, clips and, I've caught a few minutes here and there. I've always liked the style that the Marvel Studios does it more than, the DC ones. I just always felt like they always capture the Marvel characters consistently in the shows. Like it's always the same personality every time. And in DC, they kind of like, they jump around and they're like, we're going to use this writer's guy or we're going to use this writer's guy. So just from what I've seen over the past and from what I hear about what's going on now, I would prefer Marvel. And even Young Justice, when I watched it, it was okay to me. I know there's a huge following for it. I know there's a lot of fans for it. But it was never something that I was like, man, I got to see the next episode. It was really, really good. I wasn't part of the outcry. I was just like, well, that's what DC does. They cancel shows.
Well, I think with Young Justice is that the animators on Young Justice were really kind of the same team that has been developing the DC Warner animation for years. That goes back to Batman and Superman, the animated series. So when you looked at that Young Justice, you were seeing the same type of animated figure. So you were kind of, at least in my mind, you were putting that same universe together because the animated figures resemble each other. And in Batman Beware, the animation that was done in that was way superior above anything that Marvel Universe is doing on Disney XD. I mean, that Batman Beware CGI, it was almost the Pixar quality of it and the fluidness of how they portrayed the character. It was amazing. It's just that DC Universe, their properties of Teen Titans Go versus Batman Beware. It's two different demographics. You have Teen Titans Go, which is really for a younger audience, super young, and then you have Batman Beware, that is more for people of our age or culture.
They're not trying to sell toys with
Yeah,
that
they're
show.
not trying to sell toys. They're trying to sell story.
And speaking of toys, Marvel and DC, they compete on another side, and that's action figures and collectibles.
Toys.
The most popular ones that I've seen are the Marvel Selects and the DC Collectibles. DC recently changed their brand to the New 52. So when the New 52 came out, they had to re-release all their characters in the New 52 form. A lot of the Jim Lee likenesses that you'll see in these forms, even the Greg Capullo Joker is awesome. DC was very inconsistent before the New 52 Collectibles came out. Now they have a consistent line. I've been to a lot of retailer meetings, and that's a big thing they always, go after DC for or Warner Brothers for is like, hey, we need toys that we can order anytime. I want to be able to order Superman anytime. and they never really had that. And Marvel was always slacking on the reprints of their characters. And now that Disney's acquired Marvel, DC stepped up their game on their side with the New 52. We're starting to see some awesome toys. Marvel's kind of stayed with their old line as far as Marvel Select goes, but it's so consistent. And one of the things that I love about the Marvel side of it is that they have something extra in the pack every time. So like with Spider-Man, you get a crushed car. Doctor Doom, you get a part of a building that you can stand on. Like each one gets a cool piece that you can play with.
That's awesome.
And they're only like $22, $21.95, I believe. That's how much we sell them here at least. And I see them at Disneyland and stuff too. Pretty cool to see something like that at Disneyland. But these figures are they're really good. See, the only thing is now when we're talking about the DC side of it, DC, their characters are very detailed. The bodies look really good, the faces look really good, the hair is done all nice. And I'm not saying Marvel's isn't, but DC is just better quality when it comes to that. I think the actual detail going into the clothes is better on DC. But like I said, it's really cool on the Marvel side because you get the extra piece, but in the DC side, you don't get
a
extra
beautiful piece of art. That DC work is I mean, we're talking about the basic toys. 'Cause
Right.
I see what you put out, like not the Doomsday, but
Dark side.
the Dark Side.
Yeah,
too.
he's a great figure.
Man, that's a great figure.
But the price point on the DC side is higher. Now we have figures for $25. So, $3 more you're going to be paying, but you don't get the extra piece, but you get the better quality. And then DC also put out these little 2.5-inch, 3-inch figures, and you get two figures. So you get like Catwoman and Doomsday. I think it's Nightwing and Superman or something like that. You get great duo teams. You can make cool little videos and stuff with them. I've seen people make cool projects, and like I said, you can have a lot of fun with them. But they're $30 for two pieces. I'm like, these pieces are smaller. Almost a quarter the size of these other pieces. Yet I'm paying about only $10 less. And for two of them paying $30, I'm like, this is getting expensive. Now I gotta buy the two little ones for $30 and a regular one for $25. I'm spending $60 on 3 toys right now, and they're just 2 little ones and a big one. They're not even compatible. So that's the kind of thing. It's not consistent as far as the packs go. And then they released a 3-pack for the DC, and they also have the Heroes versus Villains pack where it's 8 figures. And
I saw that box.
Yeah, it's a Catwoman in the middle. You get Joker and everything. It's pretty cool. And then you get the Justice League one. Now the Justice League and the Villains one, those are good deals because you're saving about $40 because they package 7 figures for $100. So you're definitely getting good pluses on both sides. As far as playing and stuff, I would probably have to go with the Marvel figures. Like if you want to play and make cool videos and stuff like that. For DC, I would say just the collecting aspect, on your desk or showing off or something like that. I think DC is way better when it comes to that side of it.
Centerpieces.
Yeah, they're way better centerpieces.
They're way better centerpieces.
Way better centerpieces.
Yeah.
The articulation isn't my favorite. In the mini pieces and the smaller one, the dual packs, the articulation is really good. But since there's so much articulation, you lose a lot of detail. So it's kind of it's a minus on those because you're getting less detail and you're paying a lot more money for something when you can just get the Marvel figures for cheaper.
It's almost like the display case versus the toy chest.
Exactly. And there's a little bit for both, and I think more for kids, Marvel Select's going to be better, and for adults trying to see if value might go up, DC might be better. But also on top of that, like I said, they're keeping them in print more, so you might not see those values jump as fast. But we'll never know in the long run.
Yeah, they look fresh though. They look fresh. Well, my review is on a new TV show that dropped this fall, which is great. If you're a sci-fi fan like me, Almost Human, show that goes on Fox. It's a crime/thriller/drama show that takes place in the future, in a government where cops are required to have a robotic partner. There's the main cop who hates them is teamed up with a robot who is learning what it means to be human. Hence the name Almost Human. And there's a couple of little details as well. It's like that cop has a robotic leg and so on and so forth. It stars Carl Urban, which from Shrek. I love him from Dread. I believe most nerdy acts do. Just fantastic in Dread. In Doom, which is one of my guilty pleasure movies. And it also stars Michael Ealy in as well. I think the show was fantastic so far. It has a very Blade Runner, so like that gritty, futuristic feel to it, slash Minority Report, where it's polished, because they go to different parts of the city. So it's very interesting seeing like the compare and contrast between the two. The best thing, though, I would say about the show is the characters, because none of them seem to be playing caricatures of themselves, like the gritty cop, or the toughest nails boss, or so on and so forth. In fact, all the characters are really layered, and it's only a few episodes in. I remember marking to a friend after I saw the first two episodes that Michael Ealy's character, Dorian the robot, he's almost like this generation's Data from Star Trek Next Gen. Oh, my Trekkers are going to hate me out there for that. But he reminds me a lot like of Data. Like, maybe it's not so much the childlike wonder and innocence that Data brought, but the little funny remarks and so on and so forth.
I think they market it that way. They market it as a Blade Runner, Minority Report, kind of like that whole theme that you got going on.
Do you think Fox is trying to bank on that whole superhero thing, though, the whole sci-fi superhero thing, and kind of make their own, extraterrestrial / sci-fi
They've always
hero?
did it, though.
That's what I was going to say. Fox, you can honestly say, even
They've always did it,
with
yeah.
Firefly,
X-Files.
X-Files, my dearly loved Terra Nova.
But even so, it's never really been like a superhero, basically. It's basically a superhero. Right?
Actually, he's not. That's the thing. It's very grounded. It's a lot
cop
more.
movie.
It's a lot more like Law and Order 2040.
It's the equivalent of the Will Smith robot. iRobot. To me, that's what I kind of get from it. Also, is that
So he's limited in the show. He's not jumping off of buildings and stuff.
No. It's a very, very grounded.
Does he have a belly button?
Well,
Does he have a belly button and nipples?
They have not talked about or shown
other anatomical
anatomical things.
Well, I'm just saying, that's always the thing they do in those kind of like sci-fi things, and that always sells me more. Is that they kind of do little things like that,
and that's what you expect, right? Like, and that's the interesting thing I was talking about, like how they're not playing characters themselves. It's almost a bit more layered than that. They had a recent episode and it was talking about sex bots, and Dorian, he's the kind of they call them synthetics, like that was made with a chip that makes them want to be more human. So like he's talking to human beings, saying like, why do some humans say that when they die they go to a better place and stuff like that? And then he talks to another robot who's saying like, what happens to me? And he's almost playing this like comfort role to another robot when he doesn't understand himself. So it's almost like they're taking a lot of cues from The Worth of Man, from the Star Trek episode and other sci-fi stories like that. If you read the book iRobot, Isaac's
kind of reminds me of
book.
AI.
It's a lot of all that.
They're having a lot of good stuff in
A little bit more on the light side, I'm assuming.
It's a little bit on the light side, but at the same time, like some scenes, they're pretty. Like there's a pretty heavy content that takes a while to adjust, and that's one of the things that stood out for me for the show. Like the fact that they're not only tackling.
Have you seen that trend though? The RoboCop, almost human. You're kind of seeing this robotic, futuristic trend. It's pretty interesting.
I love that. Maybe they'll bring back another Dread. So
I like Urban, man.
The only thing I'm really just worried about is it being on Fox, just because like I know they don't hesitate to take out a show.
How many episodes are they in?
I think as of right now, this podcast taping, they're in like episode 5, I believe.
Oh, so how many? So 4 episodes have played.
4 episodes have played. I think I just watched. Actually, I think I may have just watched the 5th one the other day.
This kind of are you wrapped up on that point?
That's it.
This brings into what I want to talk about for one of our topics of the day: episodic watching versus binge watching. And a show like that. We're kind of talking about is it better to binge watch or is it better to view it once a week as they come out. And as far as Almost Human goes, do you think for the first example I should go? Do you think that right now the way it's structured would be better for binge viewing versus episodic viewing?
I would say episodic viewing. As much as I think the show's tackling depth and stuff like that, I don't think it's tackling enough depth / layered things to necessitate a binge viewing a la Breaking Bad, House of Cards, things like that, in my opinion.
Well, because for me, when I'm binge watching and I try to see which one I like better, for like I'm gonna use the example of Arrested Development. We kind of talked about that before.
Yeah, both big Arrested Development fans.
Yeah, I liked Arrested Development in a binge watching aspect because it kept me fresh on what happened in the last episode,
Yes.
and they would plant little things in each episode. I'm a huge Seinfeld fan. I watched Seinfeld growing up in an episodic way. Every week it come out, or even just every day when I would wake, I'll get to watch that one show at 10 o'clock that would come on, and it was always just a little bit at a time, Then I got the DVDs for Christmas, and I was laughing like I never laughed before because there's so many jokes in the show I never knew that were there. Now that I get them so much more because I get to watch them back to back to back.
Because it's fresh in your mind. You remember
Fresh in your mind. So I feel like Seinfeld is, for me, it's only a 20-minute episode, so I feel like, hey, I can just get through these. I could watch 3 in an hour and get a lot of good content. It's almost like a mini movie.
See, for me, I watch a lot of television. I have a lot of favorite shows, but you bring up Breaking Bad. See, one of the things about being a fan for me that I kind of feel diminishes my fanship of Breaking Bad is that I really did not watch it from the very beginning. I kind of caught on to it in season 3. And so when I watched an episode of season 3 as it was premiering, I was like, okay, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to binge watch from what people have been watching for 3 years. But in that aspect of me binge watching, I automatically was like the biggest Breaking Bad fan at that point. So everybody that had been watching the show from its inception and been loyally watching it every week, I automatically was like, I'm a bigger fan than you.
Now, I have a question for both of you guys when it comes to binge watching versus the episodic viewings. When I read a book or something like that, I invest myself into that book. I read the book, and I get to the very end, I just want to tell everybody about the book that I read, But you never tell people about the book that you didn't get all the way through, the one that you got halfway through or whatever. So do you feel like when you binge watch a show and you watch like a whole season and a half or a whole 2 seasons, do you feel more inclined to say that you liked it? Or do you kind of feel like yourself being biased, kind of like we're talking about with The Flash, kind of being a pre-fan? Do you feel like, okay, everyone said it was good, I've already watched 2 seasons and I got through it. Do you think you really watched it, or you're just addicted to what was going to happen next? Do you really think it's good? And have you ever tried to convince yourself? And I'm going to give you an example, before I let Adrian get off, because I can see it in his eyes. When I watched Breaking Bad, the first 2 seasons, to me, everyone was telling me how good they were. I hated them. I thought it was so boring. It dragged on. I just thought there wasn't enough. It was just like repetitive. Jesse always getting everyone in trouble. But then it grew on me, and then I really liked it. And then even at the finale, I was like, okay, I still only like half the show.
I totally agree with you, because the binge watch aspect of it for me for Breaking Bad was I kind of caught Breaking Bad in season 3 at its peak. Like, that's when everybody was like, okay, wow, I'm going to start watching it. So then when you went to season 2, and even though they might have been boring in their initial runs, right, as somebody who binge watches it and they were watching it, that current episode of season 3, and then they catch up, they're like, oh my God, the character development is so on point.
But I think with Breaking Bad, I would have rather watched it in episodic viewing, because I would have been left with those cliffhangers for a lot longer. I would have been thinking about it, like, what happened to Walt, instead of being like, boom, boom. I'm like, oh man, he saved himself again. He got saved again. It was just like, I saw the repetition of the story plots way faster.
To get out of Breaking Bad, there's a couple of shows that I have not watched that are very popular, like Boardwalk Empire or Game of Thrones. Now, I've watched the current season of Game of Thrones, but I have not went back and watched the first couple of seasons of it, so I still have to experience that. So right now, I love the current season of Game of Thrones and Boardwalk Empire.
Did you watch the current season episodic viewing, or did you watch it?
I watched the current season episodic viewing of both shows this year, Boardwalk Empire and Game of Thrones.
So when you finish that, you got to come back and tell us.
I'm going to enjoy it so much more.
Say, did you like it episodic versus binge? Because, like I said, it's just a different experience. That it's not the storyteller when he was writing it. It wasn't meant for it to be binge watched most of the time. Something like Arrested Development was designed for binge watching.
Very clearly easy to be able to say.
For me, it's going to be the mystery is going to be. I still very. Not knowing about the characters, so now
this is your prequel.
Yeah, so it's like a prequel for me to go back and watch all this history that's already been established.
Now, do you think filmmakers like that do short films or short stories should start designing or writing their shows for a Netflix format?
That's a really interesting question, because I mean, like I'm a big Breaking Bad fan, and
And a filmmaker.
and a filmmaker.
What film are you making? We haven't mentioned that in a while. What film are we making? But you're directing.
Zatanna, watch soon for something like that. I remember they were talking about Breaking Bad, and the guy was saying like he wasn't sure. He doesn't think that it would have had the success it had if it wasn't for Netflix. You know, I think that it went on Netflix. Was it around season 3 or something like that? Because I didn't watch Breaking Bad on Netflix because I started from the jump. But I will say this: looking back at the older seasons, I think that you look at season 1, season 2, they do not lend themselves to be binged watched as much as, especially the last season, broken up into when they broke the last season up into 2 separate seasons. I think it's a very clear distinction of storytelling. One is more like an isolated story versus this one where they know people are going to watch the whole season. They're not afraid to shy away from a very detailed story over 8 episodes.
This is about binge watching and not Breaking Bad, but I'm going to compound on that because for me, everything that happened in season 1 and season 2, the way that it ended, they closed certain aspects that they opened up the story of Walter White's life in season 1 and season 2. Like the relationship that he had where he worked at the car wash because he was broke. And then in the final season, he owns the car wash. And you know what I'm saying? So it kind of shows his whole life, you know what I mean? And it shows the relationship where he had established the gray matter in season 1 and season 2, which was briefly talked about.
Showed his genius. Right?
Yeah, it showed his genius. So even, and you said it before, that watching season 1 and season 2, it might seem like it's watching paint dry. But if you were to watch the final episode first
And then go back.
you are in for a ride. Dude, you are in for a ride. Now, am I
Yeah,
you
I
can
agree.
say that about a lot of shows.
Yeah. Cue Drake right now.
Yeah.
And I will say almost like, you know, it's interesting because if you look at regular, you look at your big 4 stations, look at your Fox, your NBC, et cetera, versus the hard-hitting cable stations, AMC, HBO, Showtime, like those shows where the Breaking Bads and the Game of Thrones and the Broke Empire's on, you're almost seeing a different type of storytelling that I think regular TV will eventually catch on, but for now, it's almost like cable stations. They realize how smart their audience is. And I'll put Netflix into that. You know, like House of Cards, very, very smart show. They realize how smart their audience is, so they're not afraid to tell those kind of stories. Because if those stories are going to get onto Netflix and stuff later, where they can be binge watched easy, I think that everyone has the anticipation of knowing how good the show is. Like you in Game of Thrones, you've never seen the first and second season stuff, but you know you will. Because and you're willing to
Eventually.
and you're willing to wait out. But I think that, you know, like the Law and Order SVU show that I love, that show doesn't lend itself very well to be binge watched because it's much more episodic. Here's the beginning, here's the end. At the end of this,
Shows aren't really good connect, you know.
they aren't really going to connect.
And you know when they do start connect, those shows start connecting, you're like, oh, this show's ending.
yeah, they're wrapping up some
They're
stuff.
wrapping up some stuff.
If they have
stuff.
story arcs that last throughout the entirety of the show, that is much better than every episode being its own in particular story.
Yes.
Because it's almost like a comic book in a way. You could be like, man, this story arc in Spider-Man that was between Spider-Man 215 and 220 was awesome, but 214 was just the
Now, have you
filler.
guys watched Walking Dead in Netflix and episodic? Like, have you seen an episodic and binge watching?
I've only watched Walking Dead episodically.
I watched Breaking Bad binge watching.
But what about Walking Dead though?
Walking Dead from the very inception.
So you've seen it? You've watched it every week.
Every
You never
week.
binge watched it.
Well, I binge watch it because they repeat it every time, every
right.
week. But
But
every
they're
episode.
episodic.
But like, for Walking Dead, for an example, when I'm watching that show, I like that episodic because there's so much going on. I want to wait. I want that cliffhanger. It's just like it's more like a comic book for me. You know, they write it like a comic book, like, oh,
You want
they
that
give
anticipation.
They give you that last panel right at the end, and I'm just like, okay, you got me again. And you know, when I binge watched Walking Dead too because I missed a season on TV, so I had to catch up on Netflix. I think it was like season 2 or 3. And when I binge watched that, there's more things that I saw that the continuity was just totally jacked up. Obviously it was a new show. The writing was kind of sketchy in the beginning. There hasn't been a consistent writer for the show. They bring guest writers in all the time, so there is very choppy a lot of times as far as the character translation. But when I'm watching the show, back to back to back, it just wasn't hitting me the same. I was getting bored with the characters, and it's so slow. The tempo's so slow. It's really good on that Sunday night where I can just like relax and just watch it. And after watching a long day of football, it's super intense. It's that that relaxed viewing, even though people are getting their heads chopped off.
I think Walking Dead is a horrible binge watching because, like I said, when I went to my good this week, that the mid-season finale made up for everything that they did in the previous episodes that might have failed as far as delivering impactful stories as they came on.
If you've been watching, you wouldn't even know it's a mid-season finale. You just go right through it.
You would just go right through it. There's no anticipation.
Because if you watch the mid-finale first, you're going to appreciate those little subtleties of those episode 1, 2, 3, that as we watch it episode by episode, we're like, oh my God.
See, and that's interesting because even as I listen to you guys, I think about House of Cards, or Game of Thrones, for instance. Like the anticipation, how we feel about Walking Dead from episode to episode. There is that in those shows, but not so much as like the season finale when you have to wait a whole nother year into it. That's that anticipation that's just killing me.
But even in Game of Thrones, it feels like a mini movie every time I watch it. There's so much emotion when I go into watching that show every time that I'm drained. And I don't want to watch them back to back, to be honest. I'm like, okay, I got my viewing, entertainment for today.
That's good cinema. That's what cinema should
That's
do.
how I felt about Spartacus season 2. That every episode, I would like get on Facebook and say, you know what? If this particular episode were released at a movie theater, I would pay $20 to go see it. That's how I felt about, especially
3 times because he's Adrian. So
I'm telling you.
And some of these Netflix stuff could be a movie. I feel like House of Cards could have been a movie. That show is so good. So good.
It is. And people listen. If you haven't seen it, you're probably saying like, "Yeah, everyone says that." Trust me, there's a reason why. There is a reason why these shows are that good. It's a different type of storytelling that we're seeing, and as a filmmaker and as a consumer, I love it. I think it's changing. They're not treating the audience as stupid as they think we are.
Where do you find all this time to watch all these movies? Because you watch all these shows, you have a full-time job. Where do you find all this time?
Remember you wanted to hang out last week, and I was like, nah, man, my dog's sick.
Dude, you blow me off all the time.
Yeah.
You blow me off for your dog.
All right, guys. Well, that's another good episode. We got a lot of nerdy content. Once again,
Good combos.
man, great. We got deep into it. This time,
This is awesome. This is the best one yet.
We didn't even get to a lot of stuff we wanted to get to.
Yeah.
But that's good because we got some more for next time.
Next week.
So I'm Ryan from Ryan's Comics.
I'm Theo Brown, just Theo.
This is Adrian Murphy, Black Bruce Wayne.